For years, outdoor brands have shouted to the skies, each claiming their gear is better, tougher, and smarter than the next. They bragged about seams and fabrics, about features you didn't need. And when the world started caring about the planet, those same brands tried to have it both ways, making the same old stuff, but slapping on a green label to soothe the conscience. But Livesen isn't like the rest. Livesen was born to help you strip it all down, to live with intention. Own less, live more. It's a simple creed, but simplicity is what matters most. We've been timeless since before we even had a name. Livesen grew out of a deep hunger for freedom, a love for this earth and the people who walk it. We don't obsess over the gear. We focus on the life the gear lets you live. Retailers, think on this. How many brands do you carry that are cut from the same old cloth, filling racks with sameness? Couldn't your floor use something different? A brand that doesn't just sell clothes, but sells a way of being? Livesen gear is built to last, to be repaired, to stick with your customers for a lifetime of trails, peaks, and adventures. In the Ozarks, we have an honest, gritty sensibility with a sharp edge of style. It's what happens when the love of the land meets a modern streak. And if you're wondering, Livesen's founder, Andrew Gibbs Dabney, can explain it better than anyone. Look, here's the straight talk. We believe in Livesen enough to put our name on it. Send in your Fall 25 preseason orders by January 15th. Mention this podcast, and you'll get the Rock Fight preseason special, a clean 2% off, stacked on top of Livesen's own preseason program discounts. Don't wait. Stock the brand that's burning hot in the outdoor world, the brand that's here for the long haul. Be a rock fighter, not just another retailer. Livesen. Own less, live more. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True. It's Monday. It's a holiday week, and I am here with a mic-less producer Dave. Later, we'll have a mic-less Eoin Comerford. Everyone forgot their mic this week, folks. You can tell it's the holiday season.
I have a mic.
Because we're all ready to wind things down.
Fancy one that you have.
We do have a great show lined up for you today, but before we get to that great show, have you subscribed to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter? If not, you're really missing out. Last week's newsletter was a banger. We got another one ready to go out tomorrow, which is Christmas Eve. And Hanukkah Eve. Apparently Hanukkah starts on Wednesday this year. So you want to get the newsletter, you want to have it, you want to read it, you're not going to be doing anything else, you're off. Get the newsletter. And you can get the newsletter by heading to rockfight.co and clicking join the mailing list. And lastly, I'm going to ask you again, folks, follow the Rock Fight. Take that podcast app that you're listening to us on and click follow. If you feel so moved, leave a 5-star rating. That's super helpful as well. But that's the best way to help out the pod and make sure that you don't miss an episode. So please do that for us. And guess what? It's time to start the show. So we have a pretty full episode today with our guy, Eoin Comerford. So we're going to keep this open a little bit on the brief side. I just really want to build on last week's episode where I talked about the outdoor industry operating out of fear, because there was a great example that came up this past week, and it involved your favorite podcast, the one you're listening to right now, The Rock Fight. So over the past week, Gear Patrol has been in 20-piece increments releasing their annual 100 most important product releases of 2024. And many alert listeners let us know about number 55 on this list, which is the Mystery Ranch Radix 57 range of packs, which the editors at Gear Patrol call the, quote, super technical packs that offer tremendous value and sacrifice practically nothing in return. That's why it made this list. But before they offered those thoughts on the product, the write-up opens as follows. Now I'm quoting from the write-up, and they wrote, "This year has been one of peaks and valleys for outdoor pack brand Mystery Ranch. The low point might have been when the Rock Fight podcast ignited a rumor that Yeti planned to sunset Mystery Ranch only months after buying the brand. In stark contrast, the release of the Mystery Ranch Radix pack lineup is a clear bright spot." And the article closes by saying, "They have all the other features big-time hikers have come to expect, including removable frames, adjustable harnesses, reservoir capability, and more. It's an amazing starting point that shows where Mystery Ranch will take this line of bags as long as the brand has the opportunity." How about that, guys? For new listeners around here, the Rock Fight broke the news that to the larger outdoor world a couple of months ago that Yeti, less than a year after acquiring them, is planning to sunset Mystery Ranch, at least for the specialty retail market after 2025. And, first, let me just say thanks to whoever it is at Gear Patrol that listens to the Rock Fight. The 100 most important product releases of the year list doesn't include bylines for who is writing the blurbs about each one, unfortunately. But I'm going to assume that the person name-dropping this podcast is a listener, not just another gear enthusiast who happened to see us get mentioned in an article about our breaking news by Gear Junkie. One, because it's more fun for us that way, but also because they had no reason whatsoever to bring up the rock fight episode, and yet they did. But like I said, this is a follow-up example of last week's topic about fear. In that episode, I mentioned that a significant chunk of outdoor media has become a prop for outdoor brands. There is a fear of being critical of the brands who provide ad revenue to these titles. And for me, there's a couple of things that are wrong with that mentality. For one, even if someone at an outdoor media outlet has taken your brand to the woodshed over a product or a move that you've made, that doesn't mean that your brand shouldn't advertise with them. In fact, you can argue that this media title should go to the top of the list where you want to advertise because people are going to notice that. And also, brands, don't be so sensitive. If the title in question has the attention of your audience, then who gives a shit what they print or say about you? They're a vehicle to get your message to the audience you want receiving your message. And the second thing that is wrong here is what we see in the wording by both Gear Junkie and Gear Patrol in their commentary on this whole Mystery Ranch Yeti situation. Both entities continue to say that Yeti sunsetting Mystery Ranch is a rumor, which in my opinion, really it is not. I mean, we had multiple firsthand sources reporting that a Yeti sales representative, while in a meeting, held meetings in a trade show booth, informing retailers of their plan. Now, I get it if that is no interest of Yeti to confirm to the broader audience of their plans and provide an opportunity for consumers to get angry a year ahead of time. But call any retailer who took a meeting with them at the GOA Connect show and they'll tell you what they were told by Yeti. And in defense of Gear Junkie, they were pretty upfront that they had been hearing about this news coming down the pike ahead of when we first said it on the podcast. And for Gear Patrol, they had like 100 words of room to talk about a specific product and still chose to talk about this. So I also don't want to discount the power of the fear I'm talking about. The lifeblood of a lot of these media companies is in the ad dollars. So straddling the line to tell a full story while not risking a cent of that income, that's a hard thing to do. I just feel like there's a way to have both things. Outdoor media is in a much bigger position of power than most of us realize. Consumers are demanding more from the way their favorite things are covered, and we have an opportunity to give that to them. This past year, we've seen momentum building in print. There are more podcasts talking about this stuff than ever. The daily discourse on LinkedIn is robust and frankly productive, unlike a lot of other social media platforms. And even though I'm using them as examples, Gear Junkie consistently dips their toes into these waters. And when it comes to the Yeti story, I know there was another media outlet who had all of the same information and opted not to say anything out of their own fear of the repercussions. And also kudos to Gear Patrol because, like I said earlier, this was a short blurb about a cool pack. So even though they called the story a rumor, the inclusion of what we had to say felt like a rock throw of its own because Yeti wouldn't confirm their plans. This type of coverage from places like Gear Junkie, Gear Patrol, and your old pals here at the Rock Fight is how we kick that fear to the curb and build a brand new outdoor media scene. So, I don't know. Dave, you have any thoughts on this?
I don't know what I could add to that, Colin. I thought you expressed that pretty well.
Thank you.
You know, I do think the fear factor certainly runs deep and wide. It's not just the media itself, but brands. You know, everyone is just afraid of backlash that could come through mean tweets. They're afraid on impact on, financial markets. So, I mean, those are real and also overwrought at the same time, for sure. I mean, it is, interesting if you ask a PR professional what the right response to any crisis, and not that this is a crisis, but any crisis would be radical candor, right? You get in front of something and you own it. And people are far more forgiving and understanding, even decisions they don't agree with. And I think that's the case here. Well, look, people may not like the decision, but, a business is going to be, at that size, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt of having some thoughtful analysis and know what they're trying to do with it and make that decision, even if we don't like it. But it does seem like businesses at the end of the day, in terms of just owning up decisions that people may not agree with or like, they would rather be kind of come off as smarmy and evasive, which is just a weird trade-off to me. I don't think it has to be a trade-off, but that's what they end up doing. And not talking around this when asked point blank about their intentions just comes off as untruthful, right? It's like there's no reason. We already know the answer to this question. Don't pretend that we're not asking, the question doesn't exist. So no, I think that's right. And media, look, this is a tough time to be building anything in kind of ad-supported media, for sure. And so those are understandable reflexes to have. And it would take somebody as, patently irresponsible as the rock fight to come down on the side of radical candor ourselves at the expense of, what kind of sponsorship you get from that. But look, I think to your point, consumers are demanding more of their brands. They're going to demand more of media too, and that, let's face it, brands and content in demand isn't going away, right? It's the ones that aren't being demanded. Right? They're not providing something to listeners or readers, and so therefore they're going to get penalized by it, right? And so I think that's where having a voice and having something distinct and unique to say, and honestly trying to be as truthful and transparent and forthright as you can is the way to do it.
Yeah, and that's also why I wanted to make sure we defended Gear Patrol and Gear Junkie a little bit here too, because like we talked about last week, this is a kind of decidedly unique outdoor thing where all sort of the money and power are kind of held by one side of the equation, right?
It's not like unique to outdoor.
Well,
I guess every media is dealing with that.
No, that's true, but it just, when it's like if you're talking about sports and pop culture, which is what I kind of my default go-to on this, it's like, well, it's easy. You can criticize athletes or movie stars, and the movie studios have all the money or the teams have the money or the leagues or things like that. There's a separation. It's a little more nuanced versus here. It's like, hey, all the money and our celebrities are basically the brands. So anytime you have to we want to cross that line, you are kind of biting the hand that feeds you in a lot of ways. And so I appreciate that position. It's a hard place to be hey, we want to say some stuff, but it's also, we got to be a little careful about how we do it. I appreciate the position, even if I wish people maybe were a little more bold at times.
Right. Look, I think it's exactly the same as the others. Look, if you get onto the college football universe, ESPN's not criticizing its coverage. It's not criticizing the conferences for destroying a game for money. Right, because they're part of
that's
it.
True.
But they'll attack coaching decisions, and they'll blame players for moving schools to chase money as being the problem. Right, but they don't go after the actual players or the forces that implemented the structure in the first place. So
that's a good point. It's almost like in any of these categories, we have these sort of hey, here, for whatever reason, the third rails became what the third rails are, and we just don't ever go there. And I guess in the outdoors, we need to go there a little bit more. Is kind of ultimately what I'm saying. That's a good point.
Because the brands have become our celebrities, right? We've talked about this before, and so therefore now, how do you constructively criticize? How do you legitimately criticize? How do you build up without being a homer? There's all those kind of forces, and they're brands, not individuals, right? Yeah, not celebrities or stars. And it's just it's a different take. And I think the tone of the outdoors is also different. We try to not just, even the rock fight is not trying to just kind of break down. It's trying, how do we get to these answers? How do we find solutions to this stuff? Where I don't think a lot of sports or entertainment media is built around solution building at all.
Well, and also it's a good point. Even some of the other more established media companies, if they're not looking at the repercussions from the brand, it's almost repercussion from the fans as well. Because we saw it with the North Face and Skims, and when Patagonia says we're not a fashion brand, and you get the sort of the dogmatic approach to some of the fans who are like, don't you dare criticize these outdoor brands for what their decisions are, in a really weird, bizarre way, so beholden to wearing their North Face or Patagonia t-shirts that they will be they can't even see the other side of what maybe potentially this billion-dollar company is trying to do. That is also a problem that they have to contend with, because who's going to read their magazine or their website?
There you go.
Well, and the last thing I'll say, and I mentioned in kind of my open, it's you can't have it both ways. I reference a lot. I've told you this. I've told other people this. I'm not sure if I said it on the pod, but one of my favorite podcasts is this podcast called The Town. It's a business of Hollywood podcast, and the people on that show will tear a movie studio up, down, and sideways. But then who do you hear advertising on that show? About the new thing coming out. Hey, Moana 2 is coming out. Yeah, you just heard, the guy ripping on Disney 2 weeks ago. But it's also because he also knows the people who are interested in him ripping on Disney. Well, we want to make sure they know about Moana too. So you can have it both ways. All right, well, guess what time it is right now, Dave?
What time is it, Colin?
Oh my God, it's time for our weekly segment to make sure you're getting more out of the outdoors. It's time for More with Thermore. Well, my friends, we've made it to the end of the year, and if you're a winter apparel designer or developer, you'll likely be getting out on the slopes for the first time this season over the next couple of weeks. And even if you're a little burned out right now, after a few days of holiday merrymaking and ripping turns on the local hill, your mind will no doubt be flooded with ideas for the next collection you'll be working on when you return to the office. So let me do a little act of inception right now and tell you about Thermore Invisiloft. The brand new Thermore Invisiloft offers maximum warmth per millimeter of thickness, lower lofting than a traditional insulation, and it's a great way to enhance performance while reducing the bulk of the garment. Invisiloft offers the complete package, guys. Thinner profile, maximum warmth, and exceptional hand feel, and a product whose fibers are 100% recycled from post-consumer plastic bottles. And Thermore knows, as a product developer, you need options. And as such, Invisiloft comes in 4 different options between 100 and 200 grams to meet all of your needs. So as you work on that next lineup of groundbreaking winter apparel, make sure you plan to include Thermore Invisiloft. Head to thermore.com to learn more and get in touch with your local representative, because whether it's making amazing new garments or staying warm and safe out on the trail, you can do more with Thermore.
A ball sock for ball times. It's no ordinary sock. It does what it says it does. Fit. Our socks merino, but they don't fall down. This sock fits better than your sock. A funky shaped sock that's an elegant solution to budging in the toes, heel slippage, and falling down at the ankle. A sock with patented knit structures that achieve whole foot comfort that you can really feel like, whoa. A sock that acts like a base layer. A sock that's all about the base layer. A thermoregulating moisture wicking body forming base layer. Fits is a sock that fits better than your sock, maybe even the best sock ever. It really could be Fits. A bowl sock for bold times. It's no ordinary sock. It does what it says it does. Fit, 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 fit. It really could be Fits layer. It really could be Fits better than your sock.
And welcome back to Rock Fight Radio. That was Bold Sock, the newest track from Fits. Fits has been hitting the hits since 2014 with their patented whole foot comfort approach to making performance socks. With their custom fit feel that's like nothing else, they make some of the best basics in the biz. Retailers, make sure to get your pre-order in by December 31st to take advantage of free shipping. Now, let's get back to the show. Well, let's get into this week's chat with outdoor industry insider and consigliere to the Rock Fight, Eoin Comerford. All right, well, we're back. We're here with Eoin Comerford, the Rock Fight's own consigliere. He's here to advise us and tell us what we need to do, especially when it comes to the outdoor industry, and take a look inside the outdoor industry. And guys, producer Dave's here as well, and we're 2 days out from Christmas and Hanukkah. I think it was a rare miss by the, some advertisers somewhere to not recognize that Hanukkah starts on Christmas this year. I feel like that was some big opportunity that was missed by somebody.
I'm the bah humbug in our household. It's like, really? Christmas music again? Yeah.
Thank you. God, I knew there's a reason like having you on the show. I think there's something to the Christmas music on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and that's it. And how special it would be.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. My chestnuts
Dave's
are fully roasted right now. I am done.
That's amazing. All right, well, so Eoin, after a slow start to this past week, you and I were mentioning, we kind of both thought that maybe the holiday break had started early. Right. But you put up a post on LinkedIn, like on Tuesday or Wednesday of this past week, about direct-to-consumer ski brand Montec, who apparently has quietly become a $154 million brand in the winter sports category. And that led you to pose an interesting question about the state of D2C, direct-to-consumer outdoor brands. You mentioned that according to Circana, outdoor retail sales hit $28 billion in 2023, but that number excluded D2C. So, what's on your mind when it comes to D2C? What was sort of the response you got on LinkedIn? Was it pretty, well, back to my original point, kind of proof that no, people were not on vacation. They really wanted to chime in on this topic specifically.
Yeah, we had almost 100 comments from people just piping in on here, because basically what I asked was, who are some of the brands that maybe people haven't heard of because they're outside the industry? And I think it's the reason why I think this is important is because this won't be a shock to anybody, but our industry here can be a little bit closed off, right?
What?
What? We tends to be a lot of kind of navel gazing, etc. And we're guilty on this podcast of it, by the way.
Oh, 100. But have you seen our navels?
Yes. Yeah. Right. And shall we talk about trade shows again?
Let's do it.
Anyway,
That'll be next week.
but but the point being though is that we tend to focus obviously on brands that are sold at
Right.
wholesale
Yeah.
and then those are the brands that sort of everyone's heard of, et cetera, or mainly. But the reality is there's a ton of brands out there that aren't really sold at much at wholesale, that actually have quite a following. And I think it's important though for our industry to not exclude these brands when we're thinking about the industry, because there's a lot potentially to learn from them. Like the Montec and Dope Snow are actually owned by a Swedish company called Ride Store, and it's just and I really hadn't heard much about them, to be quite honest. And everyone,
Same.
like, there were a number of people that said, where the f have you been, Comerford? These guys are all over the slopes.
They're just here to
And
hear
where
you say the words "dope snow" together.
there you go. But the reality is, I haven't been on the slopes. I'm not a skier. I'm a camper. I'm a hiker. I'm more on that side of things. I grew up in Ireland. We don't have snow, so I have an excuse. Um, but yeah. So regardless of whether you've heard of them or not, I think you can learn a lot here because of the way that they're approaching the market. They are having a big impact. They are showing up on the slopes. And looking at their e-commerce experience is amazing. I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out, but the way they do outfitting,
Hmm.
where they think about the whole outfit, they think about all of the product together as a full assortment, and then you go in and let's say you pick your jacket in Dope Snow, for example, and it's like a light pink. Then you go and you pick your pants, and they reorder the list of styles of pants in the color story that matches the jacket that you picked. Same
Yeah.
with the headwear, the neck gaiter, the gloves, yada yada yada. I mean, really, really strong the way they're going about it.
It's either really strong. I mean, I get it. I'm looking at it right now, actually. And like, I looked at it, obviously, after I same as you, I've been out of the ski game for a long time. So I was not familiar with Montec or Dope Snow. I definitely raised my eyebrow when I saw $154 million, a brand you're intimately familiar with. Livson, who Andrew was just on the pod recently, talking about how being that kind of $100 million mark is kind of a really interesting spot to be as a brand. And if you get there, there's a lot of things you can do with that. So it's like, wow, that's significant. But it's also, I don't know, maybe call me, this is an old school mindset. It's very sanitized. Like I am not inspired when I go to their website. To me, it just feels like I'm shopping at a big box store, when I look at their stuff. And frankly, between the two brands, yeah, there's definitely some differences. Obviously, Dope Snow, because they're called Dope Snow and because they add a little bit more fabric to a baggy fit, there's a difference. But I'm not like, there's the shopping experience is the same basically on both sites.
It's the same technology.
So, yeah. But also that could totally work. I see why that would work though as well, right?
Right. Well, so the interesting, so I talked to an industry insider about this, right?
Yeah.
And her comment to me was, it was kind of dismissive, quite frankly. She's like, "Oh yeah, they're showing up," but it's mainly the fly-in skiers that are wearing this product.
Interesting.
Okay, so folks, from the East Coast, right, that are on social media, that are getting all the influencer marketing that these people are pumping out, and it's a decent price point. It's not inexpensive, but it's definitely not. It's $250 jackets instead of whatever $500 jackets. But they're buying that product for their one or two or three trips to the Rockies a year, let's say. They're not the core enthusiast user, right? Which and I was like, I'm not sure how I felt about that. Like they hadn't put in the time, right? They hadn't paid their dues. They weren't, hiring the folks that were athletes and doing all that kind of stuff. It was a very I mean, maybe to your point, kind of a capitalistic approach to the whole.
But it makes sense though too, right? It's almost like a rental shop in a way, right? I mean, I kind of get it. Like I'm looking for a particular experience, but if it's truly like, listen, we're making it simple for you. It's clean. You're going to go to this place, and even if you, frankly, are going to have a mountain in your town you're going to ski on, it's simple as a direct to consumer experience. Why would we try to compete with the in-shop experience? Let's just make it simple and easy, and here's all our products and pick it out and we'll ship it to you and you're good to go.
Well, I also think it goes to the look, there's, like you said, it is a shopping experience. The website is a retail outlet. It is not a brand experience platform, right? And that distinguishing that is definitely something of the D2C that the legacy brands, and I've kind of shared this same kind of view that the website began as a brand platform, not a retail platform, and some of that still hangs over in terms of how we approach those, and they're just not of that. They have 1.5 million followers on Instagram, so they're clearly speaking to somebody with their brand,
right?
And their brand is kind of like old school action sport, right? It is just one rail ride after another, and that's just that's the brand piece of it, and it's a young audience. So I think that's just something unapologetically into that idea that you're here to shop.
No, and I think that's that's the core origination, the original post you put up, Eoin, right? It's like this is about direct to consumer. Frankly, Dave, and to your point, this is probably how you should do online direct to consumer. This is quick, easy engagement. Here's the product. What do you want? Buy it. Why? Yeah. Why do you need to have the brand experience? And I think that's what everybody tried to have it both ways as they were pivoting to D2C in the 2010s. So, but if you look at how do we have any idea what the size of this market is? Like, if it's 28 billion that is wholesale, like what is the rest of it that's not even accounted for in that Circana number? Do we even know? Do we have a sense of it?
Well, we don't. So the other D2C piece that's excluded from the Circana number is the brand's own D2C, right?
Oh, okay.
And okay,
so that's only wholesale. That's retailer. That's outdoor retail in like brick and mortar.
It's really, and the e-commerce piece too. So the backcountries of the world, REI's e-commerce, et cetera, is in that number. Okay. But it's all basically product sold through wholesale. It includes the private brand sales of those retailers, but it doesn't include the D2C sales of the brands, which, for some brands is only 10, 15%, but it's growing. And in some of the bigger brands cases, it's actually now closer to, 30, 40, 50%. So, if I had to guess, that piece plus the D2C brands that don't show up at all, it wouldn't shock me if it was another 20 billion or so.
Right. What now is that? How do you frame that within the kind of the larger, what health of the industry?
I guess it depends. I don't think it's necessarily good. More competition is typically not better. But I do think it talks to it. What it says though is that the growth that's being shown in the Circana numbers actually undercounts the amount of growth in the overall market.
Okay, so with that in mind, because then another part of your post where, like you mentioned earlier, what are the other quote unquote unknown D2C brands that maybe we don't talk about as much as some of the other ones? What were some of the comments you got?
So there was people were throwing multiple brands per comment, so there was easily 100 brands that were in there. So here we go. So these are some of the categories. One certainly is ultralight. And that's a funny community in that if you're in that space, if you're a thru hiker, you're into the ultralight, these brands are like household names. If you're not in that space, you may have never heard of them. Now, I had, being in at least the industry, I had heard of the Z-Packs of the world, the Hyperlights, Gossamer Gear, and lighted equipment, etc. But there were a few that came up that I hadn't heard of. Durston Gear came up a couple of times actually. Outdoor Vitals was another one, and there's probably a million that I'm not, in the sort of the cottage industry side of that market that I'm not even.
This is where I would actually put Senshi Designs, that designed in Colorado and built, constructed in Portland, and they are just targeted right at that thru hiker with it was an Alpha or a Polartec product, but it's really a lightweight, foldable, packable, do it all kind of top design that they've run with and started to gain traction into. All right, as well.
No free ads here, Dave. No free ads. Okay.
Okay.
They make a great product. They make a great product.
So I included them under my cool clothing, the tech fleece crowd. But I understand why you have them there, because the other players there would be Melanzana, which I think most people have heard of. Maybe Melly, it's a thing, and then Ewer, which I know I talked about in the pod before, but that's more that's the female cool tech fleece crowd.
Right. I think Melanzano will be happy to be referred to as cool, for sure. That's the
I think they know
inside.
they're cool. They know
they're
they're
the
cool.
inside inside
Please,
baseball
they're
you
brand.
have to show up.
Yeah, you have to have
you
an
have to show up
appointment.
to our store to get.
Yeah.
We don't do on. I mean, come
So
on.
you gotta it's like getting into the Barclay. You gotta write a haiku and submit an application in order to get access.
When brands decide to start their own cut and sew in Leadville, Colorado, and do that for 2 decades, they
cool.
can earn their cool.
Yeah,
but let's be,
they've earned
you know
their
what I
cool
mean?
stripes.
Right,
Fair.
but they have.
Fair.
They really have.
So, but those three actually all then would fall into another category. Maybe I need to have like a Venn diagram here, and that's the handmade in the
Yeah,
U.S.
right.
gang, and there were so many of these that I had never heard of. One that, of course, listeners to this podcast will have heard of is Northwest Alpine.
Shout out to Bill Amos.
Right.
Here we go.
Okay. But then there was Tuja, which is from Vermont. Never heard of them. Wintergreen Designs from New Mexico. Tom Bin Bags from Seattle. Frost River, some wax canvas clothing. Alpine Luddites.
That's a great name.
Virgin Outdoor. Free range equipment. I mean, the list goes on and on. Are those new to you guys, or you've heard of them?
I've heard of some of them, and it's funny, the Tom Bin bags, I didn't even think of that when we were having this conversation. I know you're probably going to poke fun of me in a minute about the one I wrote, but it also, there's a ton of the bike bag folks who make in the U.S. Oh my God, the Outer Shell and Oveja Negra. I mean, there's a lot of these bike bag companies that are manufacturing in the U.S. that are, kind of probably,
Black
again,
Bag,
in that
Black Star, Bailey Works, things like that.
Yeah.
Virgin, it's been, I've known them for a while. They're kind of the New England Melanzana, if you will. I believe they have their own production facility as well. It's not just contracting. So they're kind of all in on the vertical. As well.
Then we get into the female founders. So the female founders are having a little bit of a moment in terms of, I think, actually being starting brands. The challenge is just historically getting support from the investment community and also from the retail community. Is that I actually know a lot of these female founders, and most of them would like to be selling into wholesale. Some of them are, like Wild Rise, doing very well and is in REI. But you were, again, another female founder, Scenic, who obviously friends of the pod. Half Days, I think, as getting a bit of a name. I think Loom 6 is a women's super high end sports bra brand. Full disclosure, I'm an advisor to Loom 6. Nara. So Elevate Wagon. I'm an investor in Elevate, a really cool outdoor wagon. Po Campo, another female brand in the bike bag category.
Okay.
I could list a million, but there's a lot of really cool stuff.
I mean, what do we make of a list this long, though, right? Not to, I know you probably have a few more, but it's just like, we go back to, when we talked about Millet and we were just running through like all the European brands that are trying to break in the U.S. and the space for it. And so my initial reaction when I see this list is, God, that's a lot of brands. But then at the same time, you're like, yeah, but we opened with, Montex 154 million. You're talking about some of these other ones that have seen real success. So like, is the ceiling much higher than maybe people think for outdoor apparel brands?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of these brands are actually pretty small. Certainly sub 10 million. Some of them I think are actually sub 2 million. So, I think it's a mixed bag. There's a few $100 million brands in here, mainly the ones that have built a foothold in Europe. I wouldn't say there's a ton of $100 million US brands on this list.
So it's just a different game then, right? Versus what we talked about on the wholesale side. I mean, back to, again, some of the original points about going to Montec and Dope Snow's site. Like, they have figured out a way, I'm sure, that it's very shoppable. It's easy to go there and get what you need. To your point, if you're living in Florida and you want to fly to Breckenridge for the weekend or whatever, you're like, oh, here's a spot you can go to achieve that. And so that's the game there versus, how do you integrate into a shop and how do you kind of sell in and compete against these other brands and steal market share from these other folks so that you can show up as well. It's truly that, it's a little bit like we said with the Under Armour conversation last week, and you're not going into a store and picking up the garment and saying, I'm walking to the register with it, but you're going to go to a website and you want the challenge here is to have that click in your head and go, I'm going to buy that, and then you click buy while you're there. I mean, it's almost like that is the game here, I would imagine.
I think it also though talks to the difficulty of breaking into the wholesale business and retail, right? Because I don't know this, but a number of these brands, and they're not all necessarily 100% D2C, but
Mhm.
if I had to guess, I would think quite a few of them would love to actually have more of a wholesale business. But the US market is so tough, because you're like, you try to get into REI, and that's like whatever. It's a tricky. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But then then trying to sell into specialty retail onesie twos, 1,000 doors, and you're trying to sell in a door at a time. That's tough too. So
Right.
it's not an easy entree.
This is, we talk about the stagnation of the outdoor. We talk about the sameness of the outdoor.
Mhm.
This, to me, is the exciting, I don't know, primordial soup of innovation and trend. Like
Yeah.
this is the future. We're looking at the future. Like somewhere in here is the next North Face.
Right.
I don't know which one by any stretch,
Right.
but I think maybe just going on to that, I'm gonna, wanted to bring up that this is almost the dark matter of the outdoor universe, right? That this is all the things we don't see, but makes up the majority of actually what this core enthusiast is interacting with, right? And
Right.
that's just an interesting take.
Well, I think this is interesting product, right? Because each of these companies have carved out a niche, maybe a small niche for themselves, because they're doing something interesting and different that consumers can't get in their local gear store or in their local REI.
Yeah.
And it talks to the need for innovation within our industry that's not being met, and B, the need for differentiation in our industry that's not being met. And you guys have talked about it quite a bit. We've talked about it quite a bit on this podcast, that there's just a sea of sameness, and it's out there if you can look for it. I just would challenge retailers out there to look for it too.
Before we go, Eoin, you said you wanted to end our segment this week with your own parting shot. So what do you got for us?
I did. So just this week, the SIA came out with their participation study, which revealed that snowboarding and cross country skiing were the most diverse, and that alpine skiing was the least diverse. And I think, color me not surprised. I guess that snowboarding a little bit more approachable, inclusive. Downhill skiing, not so much. But it really gets to a bigger issue, which is this challenge that we have around talking about inclusivity and diversity in the outdoor industry. And we haven't really made a ton of headway, I would say, as an industry in this regard. And I think part of the issue is the fact that we have viewed DEI, as a thing from a values-based imperative. What I mean is we're saying we're doing it because we think it's the right thing to do, right? And to me, that never works for a business, because it's not core to who they are as a business. It's not core to who they are as a brand. It's sort of an added on thing. And so almost by its nature, it becomes performative, or worse yet, just forgotten, right? So to me, as an industry, what we need to do is understand that inclusion and diversity are a business imperative, right? It's not some value-based, make society a better place thing. It's like, if we don't get our shit together as an industry and figure out how to be inclusive to people of all races, genders, religion, what have you, we are going to get left behind. All right. This is why I worked with Teresa Baker to help found the Outdoor Diversity Alliance. So it was purely out of what I call pragmatic capitalism that I said to Teresa, we need to make this thing happen. And so that was something that started in 2023. We really got rolling this year. But I would say it is criminal that we don't have 80% of the brands that are in OIA as members of the ODA. It is criminal. And it is a black eye on this industry. We do have leaders that have joined. We've got Keane, we've got Burton, Boa, Smartwool. REI is a member, actually. Decathlon is a member. Nemo, Peak Designs, On Running, and that's it as far as I know.
Wow.
Think about all of the different brands that could be and should be members of the Outdoor Diversity Alliance that are not. So I am calling you out today. The Brookings Institute says that by 2045, the US will become a majority minority country. Okay? So that's what the demographics say. Today, as we sit here, a majority of people under the age of 18 identify as a person of color. Okay? That is demographics. That's happening today. If we as an industry don't understand that we need to be more inclusive and more diverse, we will get left behind. That is my parting shot.
It's time for a party shot.
All right, guys, as you may have noticed, we had some microphone issues this week, and look, it happens. If you listen to enough podcasts, you know that it happens. So in addition to Eoin's parting shot, I'm going to end the show with my parting shot. No parting shot from producer Dave. And my parting shot this week is about handwritten notes, because I saw someone on LinkedIn this week, and I honestly can't remember who it was, extolling the virtues of sending handwritten notes, thank yous and whatnot, and how technology can't beat a handwritten note because of the effort that goes into the writing and the sending of a paper or card based note and of thanks. And to that I say, well, if you believe that, you're objectively wrong, because I don't feel that way. Now, before you think you know where this is going, and I'm going to talk about why a digital message is equal to a written message. Nope, the reason I don't like handwritten notes isn't because I don't like writing them. Well, actually, yeah, that is part of it. But it's because I don't want your handwritten note. Look, the sentiment is what matters here, right? So spelling out two scenarios where the same message is sent digitally or you write it down and mail it to me, the message translates the same. But when you send me a note or a card, what are you expecting at that point? I mean, am I supposed to keep this thing? If I throw it away, do you consider that disrespectful or rude? What about the resources that were required to produce the paper or card and the impact to the environment to ship the card when you could have just sent me a text message and had the exact same impact? I don't see the effort you put into writing and mailing me a card as worth anything more than I would get from an email. I only see the work you gave me as a result of sending me a piece of paper that I'm going to feel guilty about throwing away. Don't give me work to do because you think that writing something out weirdly holds more meaning over typing it out. And I'm obviously not a sentimental person, and I don't want more stuff to hoard because of your belief it's more thoughtful. It's the thought and the words that matter, not the way they are offered to the person being thought of. Can we please evolve this part of our lizard brain, or just be upfront about it and just ask me. Say to me, hey, I like to send cards. Do you like to receive cards? And I'll tell you, no. Don't waste your time or mine. Just shoot me a text and say thanks. It's the presumption that written notes are just so obviously better that I take umbrage with, and that's why this is my parting shot. All right, we can wrap it up right there. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today was producer David Karstad. Art direction provided by Sarah, the Slayer of Gifts, Gensert. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening, and he's here to take us out. It's Krista Makes. He's here to sing the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.